Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mumey, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 140 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mumey, and excited to be with you today. Glad that you're taking some time out of your day to share with us and to find out more about the bar exam and things that are going on. It is a beginning of a busy period of time in the bar. As we turn the calendar over to April, we start getting bar results from the February 2017 exam, and those should start coming out in the next few days, and we will be sharing with you in upcoming episodes the results as they come out and the information that we get. Also, we'll talk to some of our successful bar takers as those results come out and we're able to get up with them and spend some time and get their stories. I think those are always some of the most popular episodes that we do here on the podcast. Today I'm going to be sharing with you an excerpt from my weekly live webinar Q&A that I do with our registered students. In this week's excerpt, I talk to my students about playing the imitation game. And we're going to talk about what it means to write like a human being and what it means to write like a machine. And we'll be talking about the Turing test. So if you remember that story or you saw the movie with Benedict Cumberbatch, we're going to be talking a little bit about playing the imitation game today. So I hope you'll stick around for that message. Before we do that, I want to invite all of you who are getting ready to take your exams in July 2017 or February 2018 to join me this Thursday, that's April 6th, for a live masterclass at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 12 noon Pacific time, and the title of the class is How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam, the 4 Powerful Steps to Passing the Bar Guaranteed. This is really important information that you don't want to miss out on. It's completely free, and in this 90 minutes, I'm going to be looking at exactly what you have to do step by step in order to pass the bar. Whether you're a first-time taker or a repeat bar taker, or perhaps someone who took the bar many years ago and now you've got a new bar exam you have to take. And certainly for those who are foreign-trained attorneys as well. So we're going to be offering this material free of charge, as I said, on Thursday, April 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern. But you do need to register to join us. Seating is limited. And to register, all you have to do is go to celebrationbarreview.com. You'll see a button right there on the front page to register, and we'll get you all signed up. Now, if that particular date and time don't work for you, we also have an on-demand version of the webinar. And if you just scroll down that same page, you'll see the button to schedule your own showing of the material. And we encourage you to do that as well. The obvious difference is that in the on-demand version, I'm not going to be answering questions live. So that's the difference between the two. But other than that, same information, same great offers, same information that I think you're going to want to have as you get underway. One question I've been getting from people is, if I'm waiting on my results from the February 2017 exam, what should I do right now? Should I start to study if I don't think I passed the exam? And I would say that if you feel like you're in that particular position, I would invite you to join me on Thursday for the master class. I think that we'll be talking about some things that might help you evaluate whether or not you did or did not pass your previous exam and why you might want to get started before you actually get your results back in. So in any event, I hope you'll join us for that class Thursday, 3 p.m., How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Well, I'm excited to share today's message with you about playing the imitation game. If you've been struggling with how to write bar essays and performance tests and get high scores, this is information I think that's going to be really helpful to you. So let's jump into that message that we shared with our students just a few days ago. Okay, so I had a conversation with a student earlier this week about his writing. And this individual, when we were talking about his writing, and he's fairly early on into the course, said to me, it's so hard for me to change my writing style from law school and what I learned before, but I feel like what I was being taught to do was to write like a machine. And I said, that's kind of interesting. It's sort of like the Turing test. And he gave me a look I could see that in his brain, he was doing the quick scan Turing test. What the, and then suddenly his eyes open and I go, oh yeah, the Turing test. That's exactly what it is. And I said, well, okay, that's really an interesting idea. And I want to talk some about that today. And I want to share with you a thought that I would call the imitation game versus finding your voice when you're writing. Now, the Turing test, some of you know about, but perhaps some of you don't. It's a test that was developed by a computer researcher by the name of Alan Turing in Great Britain in 1950. And there was a great recent movie called The Imitation Game. Benedict Cumberbatch starred in it. And it's a fairly accurate story of Alan Turing's life. But the Turing test was a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior that was equal to or indistinguishable from that of a human. And the idea was that you could have a, quote, conversation with a machine in which you're not in the same room. And if the replies from the machine were such that you couldn't tell if a human was responding to you or a machine, then the machine had passed the Turing test. And Alan Turing actually was doing computer code breaking for the Allies during World War II. And it was really extraordinary stuff that he did. And his life is amazing. It was a tragic life, really. He was put through hell by the government of Great Britain. In any event, this idea of the imitation game, could a machine imitate a human, really has captured the imagination of computer programmers and intelligent assistants and artificial intelligence in a number of different areas. And certainly today it's a big deal. I think it's got relevance to the bar exam because as I thought about how people are taught to write, particularly in law school, it's really this problem of the imitation game. They're really being taught to write like a machine, not a machine learning to write like a human. And the net result is that people don't find their voice as writers. And because they can't find their voice as a writer, the writing suffers. And so what I wanted to do today was to share 5 qualities of what I think are the imitation style of writing, and then compare and contrast those to 5 qualities of finding your voice, authentic writing. And I think that as you evaluate the kind of work that you're doing for the bar, what you want to be aiming towards is doing writing that's authentic, that represents your voice and who you are, and not writing that we would say, it's possible that a machine wrote that particular answer or that particular concept. So I want to share with you some of these imitation games that I think we learn in school, or maybe even in some of the big box bar reviews that teach you to do a traditional IRAC kind of writing. So what are the 5 qualities of imitative writing? Well, here's the first one. You can tell if it's imitation writing if it is heavy in terms of being rote and mechanical. If it's literally just the elements of negligence are, whatever. My brain has just gone completely blank. I don't even know the elements of negligence, apparently. But if I'm listing the elements and I'm talking about duty, breach, causation, proximate cause, and so on, and all I'm doing is listing those elements, then that's pretty rote. It's pretty mechanical. In fact, your brain checks out. My brain just checked out when I had to tell you those things off the top of my head. If you see writing that is very rote, that is very mechanical, that just says, here's the rule and the elements and keeps listing elements and keeps listing elements, well, a machine could do that. A machine could say, if someone says or sees the word torts or negligence, drop the following 5 words in. If you see contract, put in the following words about formation of a contract. If you see hearsay, give the following definition of hearsay. If you find a community property problem, give the definition of community property. You can see how that would be very rote and it would be very mechanical. And so you could literally create these keywords that would draft every time they see certain words, they go off that way. I think of this in part because I've got a tool that we use in the business called ManyChat. And ManyChat picks up Facebook messages and it sees keywords and it responds back to people when we're not available to answer. It's a little creepy, to be honest, it's like, really? Okay. It knows this word, it drops this information nugget on them. But when it comes to writing a bar essay, if it's rote and mechanical, that is a quality of imitation. A second way you know if you've got imitation writing is that there's little or no analysis in the answer itself. Literally, if you look at an answer, and mostly what you've got are rules, that rote writing, that mechanical writing, and there's almost no analysis of the rule use itself. It's just the rule, and then we move on to the next rule and the next rule and the next rule. Without any analysis, without any nuanced thinking, you have, I think, essentially an imitation problem. And so one of the things that I look for if I'm looking for this Turing kind of imitative writing is that I'll see that there's very little analysis. There's just conclusions and there's rules, but there's very little that really shows how people thought through and analyzed the problem. They didn't really apply very much there. Now, the third quality that I would describe would be that there is a recitation of elements and the rules, and of course it's rote and mechanical, but it's just really reciting the elements, it's reciting the rules, and then it's just leaving it all out there. So this writing is mechanical, it's very staccato, it's very rote, it's very memorized, and it tends to be heavy in elements and rules. Lots of rules, whether they apply or not. Okay. The fourth quality of imitation writing is that it's disconnected. Here's an idea over here, here's another idea over here, here's another idea over here. There is no connection between them. We were talking earlier about mind mapping as a way to see connections between ideas. Well, in this kind of an essay or an answer, a performance test, if you will, there's virtually no way to mind map it because nothing's connected. It's all disconnected. It's all random. It's a form of here's a response. You hit me in the right spot of my knee and I kick, right? It's a reflex kind of response. When you see writing that's wildly disconnected, one piece from another, then you've got that kind of imitation writing. And the fifth quality, the last quality to me of imitation style writing, is that it lacks common sense. You get crazy conclusions, outrageous conclusions. You get things that would never happen in any form of real common sense. You would say, really? That's really the result that you would reach? Well, no, of course it's not the result I'd reach, but I've got these rules and these elements and I didn't do any analysis. So I just dropped the rules and the elements in and said, well, of course that's got to be the case. You really mean to tell me I had a contract with a 5-year-old? I mean, just because all the elements were there of a contract? I don't think so. So I think you get these absurd results that lack common sense. And frankly, machines can do that really well. Machines can reach completely bizarre results when they're talking back to you as a bot, right? And go, what? That's not what I was talking about. That's not solving my problem at all. Sometimes you see this when you get these automated Twitter responses. It's like, what? What are you talking about? That's not it at all. And that's a quality of imitative writing. So we had 5 qualities of imitation writing. It's rote and mechanical. There's little or no analysis. There's primarily an emphasis on reciting elements of law and rules rather than anything else. It's wildly disconnected from one section to the next, and it lacks common sense. Well, that sounds pretty exciting, doesn't it? It sounds really good, like it should really work. And I know that some of you are saying, yeah, but it worked in law school. Well, that'd be great if you were still in law school, but you're not. You know that thing over my shoulder there? That's a law school diploma. It's done. It's over. Guess what? They gave me the piece of paper. I'm done with law school. You should be done with law school. It's got no value anymore. It was for law school. And in law school, you could be an imitator. You would look at model answers that the professor gave to previous exams. In fact, you could practically write them out word for word because you knew the laziest professors were going to ask the same questions year after year and just repeat them. And a machine could have written it, right? And you would have passed. So that's the imitation style. But that's very different than what the bar exam wants. The bar exam is actually looking for what I call finding your voice. It's learning to find how you write. And in writing, we say finding your voice as a way of distinguishing you from this mechanical machine writing. So what are the 5 qualities of voice writing? The first is that it's responsive to the question or the problem, and it's unique to you. A good piece of writing will be unique. I should be able to look at a piece of writing if I'm familiar with the writer's style and know who's writing it. Look, you do this all the time. You open up your favorite news information source, and it's got a particular voice or a style. If you're a fan of Rachel Maddow, you know the A block that she does has a particular voice and style. If you're a fan of Bill O'Reilly, you know that his A block is completely different and has its own style and approach. And literally, there is a voice. There is something unique about the way that's done. When you're writing a bar essay, it should be unique to your voice. It should be a reflection of your personality, of your experience, of your life. And if it doesn't reflect those things, then I think you're really keeping the reader away. You're keeping them at a distance that you don't need to do. It also, in that process of being unique, has to be responsive. In other words, instead of being rote and mechanical, same thing is written in every question. If it has the word torts, you want to be responsive to the particular problem that's being asked. If the problem is about a tort remedy, talk about the remedy, don't talk about the tort. If it's about the elements of a contract or the formation of a contract, write about that and don't talk about the remedy unless it's asked. In other words, you're responsive because you're thinking about what's going on. The second quality of voice writing is that instead of being having little or no analysis, it's highly analytical. Good writing is highly analytical. It's what makes lawyers lawyers. It's what separates us from the animals, from the beasts, from the machines. Look, they don't need you to do a Google citation anymore. You got that, right, folks? They don't need you in a law firm to just do the manual work of lawyers 30 or 40 years ago. What you're needed for today is your ability to analyze and solve problems. That's what intelligent assistance means. That's what I think makes us different than just machines that go through and say, oh, here's the word, shows up in 3,000 cases. When you're writing a good essay, it's highly analytical. It looks at the problem, and instead of trying to spot issues, it dives into the disputes and the conflicts, and it shows how you would use and resolve those conflicts. So instead of being an answer with no analysis, it's an answer that's heavy on analysis. And if you're in our course and you're thinking about that, it's that third paragraph when we get into the analysis that becomes so very important. The third thing that is different in talking about your voice versus imitation, I said that in imitation, you recited elements and rules, but when we're talking about voice writing, now we focus on the application of the principles to the problem. So here what we're doing is we're saying, yeah, I know the rules, but that's not the point. The point is, how do I apply the underlying principles of law to this particular problem to reach a solution? That's what analysis is. You see, I think that part of what happens is that very often students get so locked up to this idea of reciting elements that they forget that there's a reason for doing it. And the reason is to say, these principles support this argument. When you're doing a performance test, it's really nothing other than taking what's in the library and viewing the facts of the problem through the lens or the viewpoint of the library. It's applying the rules, the law, to that fact pattern to create an outcome. That's what application is. And so when you're doing good voice writing, what you're doing is you're focused on how do we apply these principles of law that I've articulated in a way that helps resolve the problem. That's very different than just saying, here are the elements, go figure it out on your own, which is what the machine does. The fourth quality of voice writing is it's empathetic. Look, if you're writing about these problems and you're saying to yourself, well, this is just a stupid bar exam hypo and I could care less. Well, I understand that, but I think it actually hurts you. I'd like you to feel like the parties in the question are real people or real entities or real clients, and you've got an obligation. I often say to students, if this was your first case out of law school and you were a member of the bar and you were presented with this hypothetical, would you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning thinking about how you could resolve it? And almost without exception, they say to me, yeah, of course I would. And my thought is, well, if you would do that, why would you give such a superficial slapdash kind of answer when you're writing this essay or doing this performance test? Sometimes it's time-based, and that's the reason for a shorter answer, but often it's because there's little or no empathy. Right? It's just, oh yeah, there was, Bill and Jane and, they got a divorce and well, who cares, right? But if you were representing Bill or Jane, I assure you they would care very deeply about the rules of community property or the rules of family law in their state or who gets custody of the children or whatever it might be. And you would be thinking and empathetic to the concerns of both parties in trying to resolve that problem. Somebody said to me the other day that the kind of judges that they hated the most were the judges that really just didn't seem to like being judges, that didn't have much empathy. And I agree with that. I'd rather have a judge, even one that I disagreed with, who at least liked the process of judging. I did not like or enjoy Justice Scalia at all. And he beat the crap out of me as a lawyer. But I at least could respect the fact that he cared about what he was doing. And there's a big difference there. And I think that one of the things you have to do is to view your writing from the standpoint of empathy. And when there's empathy in your writing, not sympathy, not high emotion, but when there's empathy, there's a subtlety to the writing that comes through. And it's important to keep that in mind as you're writing. And then the fifth quality, the last of these, I said that when you're doing machine imitation writing, you lack common sense. But when you're doing voice writing, you really are an advocate. You are a counselor at law. You are providing legal counsel and you are representing your client's interests. That's what good writing does. It advocates. Now, it doesn't have to be over-the-top advocacy. A good essay is a balanced piece of writing. Here is advocacy on the part of party A, and here's advocacy on the part of party B, and here's who I think has the better of those two arguments. That's perfectly acceptable. But you can notice that it's really in the form of advocacy. Here's the position and the arguments of party A, and the position and the arguments of party B as supported by the law. That's very different than I have no idea, I have no common sense, I'm just telling you these are the rules and no matter what crazy result results. You see the difference? It's huge. And it's what demonstrates that you're competent and capable to be in the practice of law, to actually be working with real live clients, helping them solve their problems. Have you ever been with somebody who's autistic, who's brilliant, but has no personal skills at all, no relational skills, no ability to see what's going on or to have any empathy at all? Sometimes I think machine writing is autistic writing. It's literally just, here's all the information I know, and I'm giving it to you, and I really don't care what you think about it or whether it makes any sense. Whereas voice writing is warm and caring and empathetic. It makes sense. You're advocating. You're really showing how you would function as a lawyer. And as I look to the profession of law over the next few years, I think the benefit and the interest is clearly going to be on those people that can do voice writing, who can be advocates, who can be counselors at law. I don't believe that anywhere in the practice of law do we need more people who are human Google. Don't need it. And we got bots that do a better job. So really, what are you getting at when you write that way? And if you're writing that way because of some misguided notion that the bar exam is like law school, look, it's not. And if you're doing it that way because you took a bar review course that said, well, let's just do what you did in law school because that's a whole lot easier. Well, yeah, that didn't work either. So you see, there is a point where you've really got to use your common sense to think about what you're doing and then apply that common sense. And when you do that, the writing gets so much better. So ultimately, what do the examiners prefer? Well, I think they prefer the kind of writing that shows that you're responsive to the question, that lets them see that you've got a unique voice, that you're analytical, you're focused on the application of principles, that there's empathy to what you're doing, and that you're an advocate. You're using common sense. And when you do those things, then I think you've got the formation and the basis of really effective writing. And then I think that the Turing test for you has been met. Well, that's our message for today. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. And you could start thinking about, is your writing look more like the writing of a machine or the writing of a human being? Now, before we say goodbye for this week, I just want to invite those of you who are just finding our podcast to subscribe to the podcast. We come out every week on Wednesday, and you can subscribe by going to Apple iTunes or iHeartRadio and subscribing there. or you can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com, and at the top of the page you'll see a link for podcasts. Just click on that link, and you'll find the show notes from all of our episodes, as well as every prior episode of the recordings, and I invite you to check those out. There's a lot of great material there. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you again next week along the Extra Mile. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.